What if Vikings lived at the same time as dinosaurs? Chapter 1, The Era of Forgotten Dawns. The beginning was not marked by the cry of a newborn infant, but by a thunderous roar that shook ancient forests and echoed across virgin horizons. It was the cry of a Tyrannosaurus, the ruler of megaterrans, an ancient predator whose silhouette stood out against a crimson sun, still unaware of the human shadow. Millions of years remained before the first hominids would appear, but in this saga, time decided to play its trick. Far to the north, beyond misty seas, on lands that by geological standards were only beginning to form their fjords, a people was being born. They did not yet know they would be called Vikings, but their veins already pulsed with a thirst for discovery, and their hands gripped axes forged from meteoric iron, a gift from the heavens. These people, sturdy and resilient, lived in harsh conditions where each day was a struggle for survival. They learned to read the stars, predict weather by the tides, and build ships capable of challenging the fiercest storms. Their world was one of primal wildness, where forests teemed with unseen beasts, and winged monsters soared in the skies, casting shadows that struck terror into all living things. They believed in the mighty gods of Asgard, Odin, Thor, and Freya, and their mythology seemed to be an answer to the formidable realities they faced. They were pioneers, trailblazers, whose first tentative steps into unknown lands were mere harbingers of great voyages. Over time, nature began to reveal its secrets to this people. They noticed how seasonal animal migrations influenced their hunting routes and learned to use these cycles for survival. Their campfires became not just sources of warmth but also places where the first songs and sagas were born, passed down through generations. These tales, filled with heroism and struggles against the forces of nature, strengthened their spirit and prepared them for future trials. In the depths of caves, they found traces of ancient creatures, their bones buried under layers of earth, hinting at a world where giants were commonplace. These discoveries fueled their imagination, planting seeds of courage that would later blossom during their great journey through time. Chapter 2, The Call of Uncharted Seas. The legends of the North were rich with tales of drakars cutting through untouched waters and warriors whose shouts echoed across foreign shores. But until now, these journeys had been confined to the coastline. Now, as the population grew and the land grew poorer, the Jarl's gazes increasingly turned to the horizon. Yet this was not merely a search for new lands to plow or plunder. Ancient prophecies, whispered around campfires, spoke of lands where the sun burned brighter, where rivers flowed with gold, and where monsters were so vast they could swallow an entire ship. Wise elders, their faces etched with wrinkles like maps of ancient lands, recounted visions of enormous lizards, akin to mountains of flesh, roaming the earth. Many laughed at these tales, but some Jarls, those whose veins carried the blood of bold seafarers and explorers, began to assemble a fleet. They built drakars larger than ever before, reinforcing their hulls, fitting them with larger sails, and gathering the finest warriors. This was no mere trading or raiding voyage, it was an expedition into the unknown, a step into the abyss of time where no one had dared to venture. Among these Jarls stood out one Harold Ironclaw, whose reputation as a warrior and leader was impeccable. He believed in the prophecies more than most, claiming that the gods of Asgard had shown him the way through visions of Thor thundering with lightning. His charisma inspired young warriors, and soon the best shipbuilders and weaponsmiths joined him, ready to realize his dream. They experimented with new materials, reinforcing the ships with oak planks and covering them with the hides of sea beasts for protection against storms. This preparation became a symbol of their resolve, and every hammer strike on wood rang out like a vow to conquer the unknown, strengthening their faith in a great future. Chapter 3, Crossing the Time Barrier. The journey was grueling. Days turned to nights, storms gave way to calms, and every sailor, every warrior aboard felt the very fabric of time warping around them. Dense, impenetrable fogs enveloped the ships, making it seem as though they sailed not on water but through a milk of oblivion. Compasses went haywire, stars vanished behind an eternal veil, and the sound of waves merged with an ancient song calling them onward. After endless weeks, the drakars emerged from the mist into a world that could not exist. The air was humid and heavy, laden with the scents of ancient plants. The sun, hanging high in the sky, seemed larger and redder than usual. But the most shocking sight lay on the horizon. The skies rang with cries and roars unlike any known animal. Then they saw them, enormous, unseen creatures with skin covered in plates, with long necks rising above treetops, and winged monsters soaring in the sky, eclipsing the sun. This was a world frozen in its primal fury, a prehistoric landscape teeming with life they could scarcely imagine. Fear and awe gripped the hearts of warriors accustomed to the harshest battles. They realized they had crossed not just a sea, but a boundary of time. The first days in this world were filled with chaos. Warriors struggled to orient themselves, marking unusual natural phenomena on their maps, rivers flowing backward, trees whose branches moved without wind. Some reported seeing strange lights hovering over the jungles, adding mystery to their journey. Harold, as the leader, ordered the keeping of journals, recording every new sound and sight, believing these records would become their legacy. This discipline helped them maintain their sanity, turning fear into curiosity and laying the foundation for future discoveries in this enigmatic world. Chapter 4, First Steps on the Land of Giants. The landfall was cautious. The Drakars glided slowly toward a shore of dense mangrove thickets filled with unfamiliar plants. The air was thick with the sharp sense of decay and life, and the sounds around them were a mix of unknown bird calls and distant rumbles that shook the earth. The first warriors to disembark held their axes at the ready. Their steps were silent, their eyes wide open, peering into the foliage. Soon they stumbled upon giant footprints pressed into the soft soil, footprints each the size of their Drakar, and then they saw them up close. A group of herbivorous dinosaurs, their backs armored with plates, roamed the thickets, tearing leaves from trees. They were enormous, yet seemed harmless. Still, every Viking felt an unmatched tremor, realizing their insignificance before these titans. This was a world where man was but a tiny speck, and the first encounter was more astonishing than confrontational. It was here they began to grasp the scale of their discovery and their vulnerability. As they explored further, they uncovered the first signs of life, adapting to local conditions. They learned to avoid swamps where quicksand could swallow an unwary warrior and to find sources of clean water amid the dense growth. Their leaders began organizing deeper expeditions into the jungles, marking trees to avoid losing their way back to the Drakars. These initial steps bolstered their confidence, and they began to see this world not just as a threat but as an opportunity for new feats that would enter their sagas as the greatest trials. Chapter 5, Encounter with Death on Four Legs. Not all dinosaurs were peaceful herbivores. The true test began as the Drakars ventured deeper into a river surrounded by thick jungles. The sun was sinking, painting the sky in crimson hues, when an ear-splitting roar froze the blood in their veins. There it stood on the shore, Tyrannosaurus rex. Its mighty jaws gaped, revealing rows of dagger-like teeth. Its eyes, like two embers, burned with hunger. This ancient predator, drawn by the scent of humans, moved toward the water. Vikings, accustomed to battles with bears and wolves, had never faced such power. Arrows and spears launched at the beast bounced off its armored skin like pebbles off stone. One Drakar, too close for safety, was capsized by a single swipe of its claw, and warriors who couldn't leap free were torn to shreds. This was no duel, but a slaughter, only thanks to the extraordinary bravery and self-sacrifice of the Jarl, who ordered part of the jungle set ablaze to distract the monster, did the fleet's remnants manage to retreat, leaving behind fallen comrades and a deep sense of horror. After the retreat, the Vikings gathered on the shore, assessing their losses and pondering this new enemy. Harold, despite his exhaustion, urged his people not to succumb to despair, asserting that the gods were testing them for a great purpose. They began discussing new tactics, using fire as a weapon, and practiced throwing spears from greater distances. This night became a lesson in survival, where fear turned into resolve, and each survivor swore vengeance for the fallen, strengthening their fighting spirit for future battles. Chapter 6, Survival in a Primeval World. The surviving Vikings realized that survival in this world required adaptation. They sought safer locations, favoring high cliffs and rocks where dinosaurs couldn't reach. Food became a challenge, their usual fare was unavailable, and studying the prehistoric flora and fauna became a matter of life and death. They learned to hunt small dinosaurs resembling giant birds and to gather unfamiliar yet edible fruits and roots. Their ships, damaged in battle, were repaired, and their tactics evolved. They began constructing high palisades with sharp stakes to protect their settlements. Metal became a priceless resource, with every axe and mail shirt treasured. They also noticed that some dinosaurs, though enormous, were solitary by nature, while herd dinosaurs could be dangerous in large numbers. Observing the habits of these giant creatures, the Vikings developed new survival strategies, attempting to predict the behavior of these ancient beasts. Over time, they began sharing knowledge, forming the first rudiments of a community in this alien world. Young warriors, inspired by their elders, learned to craft primitive traps from vines and sharp branches, while women among the survivors began collecting herbs to treat wounds. Their camp gradually transformed into a fortified outpost, with fires burning around the clock to ward off nocturnal predators. This adaptation marked their first step toward not just surviving but thriving, turning the chaos of the primeval world into an ordered existence. Chapter 7, Hunting Giants, A New Art of War. At times, in desperate searches for food or defense, the Vikings were forced to battle dinosaurs. These were not mere skirmishes but carefully planned operations. They used their knowledge of the terrain, setting traps, toppling trees onto the heads of giants, or driving them into dead ends. Against stegosaurs with their powerful, spike-covered tails, they learned to use phalanxes, shielding one another. Against smaller but swift velociraptors hunting in packs, they employed nets and incendiary mixtures. These battles were incredibly risky, but each success bolstered their spirit and gave them hope. They transformed their mighty axes from tools of plunder into instruments of survival, modifying them with longer, stronger blades. Each day brought new lessons, each piece of knowledge forged in the crucible of survival. Gradually, from a band of frightened seafarers, they became giant hunters, their trophies consisting of dinosaur hides and tails no one in their homeland would believe. Particularly successful was the hunt for a young triceratops, whose horns became a trophy adorning the camp. This feat inspired the Vikings to create a ritual where each hunter contributed part of the kill to a communal pot, symbolizing unity. They began training dogs brought with them to alert them to approaching predators, giving them an edge during night watches. These innovations turned them into true masters of war, their skills passed down to future generations, laying the foundation for a new survival culture. Chapter 8, Losses and Discoveries. Every new discovery came with losses. Many warriors perished, torn by claws, crushed by powerful legs, or poisoned by unknown plants. The bitterness of these losses ran deep but did not break their spirit. In this primeval hell, they found unexpected beauties, sparkling crystals in caves, rivers teeming with unfamiliar fish, and skies where stars shone at night, ones they had never seen before. They uncovered remnants of ancient settlements not belonging to humans, astonished by evidence of even older civilizations that existed long before them. Some Vikings, more curious, began studying the geology of this world, collecting samples of rocks and minerals. They attempted to map this uncharted continent, marking dinosaur habitats and safe routes. They realized this world was not just dangerous but full of unfathomable mysteries, their presence here a mere speck in its infinitely long history. One day, they found a cave with rock paintings depicting figures resembling humans and dinosaurs together, sparking debates about ancient inhabitants. These findings inspired them to create their own drawings, depicting their battles and victories, hoping to leave a trace for future generations. They began using crystals as lanterns, discovering their phosphorescent properties, which improved night expeditions. These discoveries became symbols of their evolution, transforming losses into a source of strength and knowledge. Chapter 9, The Wind of Change and Longing for Home. Time passed. Some Vikings started families, and children were born who grew up in a world full of dinosaurs, for whom this was the only reality. But the older warriors, whose hearts were filled with memories of fjords and green fields, began to yearn for home. They gathered to decide their fate, stay and build a new settlement in this alien world, or risk returning through the time-warped ocean. Those who stayed faced uncertainty but also the chance to become the founders of a new, unique people. Those who chose to return faced a perilous journey home to a world they might no longer recognize. This was a difficult choice that divided their community. Back in their native Scandinavia, new eras had begun, new rulers came and went, and beliefs changed. But they knew none of this. They knew only their drakars, their axes, and their desire to return to what had once been home. The Council of Elders, gathered around a fire, debated long, weighing every argument. Those who wished to stay proposed using their knowledge of dinosaurs to create a mighty kingdom where humans and giants lived in harmony. Others, driven by nostalgia, insisted on returning, believing their deeds would inspire their native people. Harold, as leader, suggested a compromise. Part of the fleet would go home, while the rest would stay to explore. This decision split families but strengthened their resolve, leaving hope for a future reunion if the gods were merciful. Chapter 10, Echoes of Legends in a World of Two Eras. History tells us that few managed to return. Drakars, miraculously surviving storms and time distortions, re-emerged from the mist into an entirely different Scandinavia. Their tales of giant lizards, roaring dragon birds, and lands where time stood still were met with disbelief and mockery. Survivors were deemed madmen, their legends dismissed as drunken rants. They were mere shadows of heroes, strangers in their own time. Yet fragments of truth seeped into Scandinavian folklore. Stories of Midgardsormr, Nidhogg, and giants living in Jotunheim. Perhaps the origins of these myths lie in those incredible encounters. Perhaps some returnees brought back artifacts inexplicable to their contemporaries. Maybe one of the drakars, discovered in later centuries, contained something that puzzled archaeologists. And what became of those who remained in the dinosaur world? Their descendants might have become a unique branch of humanity, adapted to life among ancient giants, intertwining their destiny with theirs. The echo of this saga, perhaps, still resounds in the depths of the earth, a reminder of the moment when a Viking's axe met the thunder of a Tyrannosaurus, and two worlds, separated by millions of years, briefly converged. Among the returnees were those who preserved expedition journals, describing not just battles but also the beauty of this world, waterfalls glittering in the sun and flowers emitting light. These records reached the Skalds, inspiring new sagas that eventually turned into myths. Those who stayed might have built a civilization where Viking axes and dinosaur bones formed the basis of their architecture, leaving traces that future archaeologists would struggle to decipher. This intersection of eras became an eternal reminder of courage and resilience, leaving an echo that still resonates in legends and the mysteries of Earth.